This is Program Directorpiece. Yeah, so I'm now a podcaster as well, but I'm looking for ideas about what to make it about. Like what should I talk? What do people like?
Okay, let's do it. Hey, let's do it. Welcome to another episode of Directorpiece Theater, the show where two directors, who you may or may not recognize from the old website Cracked, talk about some of your favorite pop culture popcorn movies and the craft of directing therein. Sometimes we'll talk about how movies are marketed, how they're made, what they mean, all kinds of different things. I am one of your co-hosts, Adam Ganser, and with me is my favorite side of fries,
Abe Epperson. You didn't expect that I'd do it perfectly, did you? I actually wasn't anticipating. I thought I was going to do the intro this time.
Yeah.
Usually we do vice versa, but you took the intro. You're running with it. I like it. You're in a good mood.
I am. I'm jovial.
Yeah, but it means that I can't use that joke later, so... So now I'm really all out. I can't do our typical bit of me mispronouncing my name or something like that.
You're getting 20 words out of me max.
I'm not a comedian, man. I can't just be constantly thinking of bits.
You and I have been deflecting the name comedian, the job title comedian, for about 10 years now, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I wouldn't say it was me who's deflecting it. I would say it would be my audience.
I would say facts have been
I would say
deflecting
that,
it.
like, hey, no one's ever come up to me and been like, hey, you're funny. You a comedian?
It's true. Although I do feel like when you talk to people or work with people who are not in the comedy field, they do sort of lump you in more with comedians, and then you have to like, well, I'm actually a filmmaker, and they go, okay, and then they immediately punch you because they don't want to hear any of that.
Yeah, they're usually
they don't want to hear a word of that.
Yeah, me too. But it usually starts with like, why are you in my house? Please get out of here.
Right.
These are the
and
things
you're like,
that
sure,
people say.
give me some chili first, please.
Yeah.
I just need a little chili, and I'll be on my way.
We have two very different bits. I like it.
I assume if you're going to break into a person's house, it's that they got some chili.
I get.
What else are you doing there?
Fucking yeah, dude.
Fucking chili? Fuck yeah.
That's
Agreed.
the right answer, dude.
Doesn't even matter what kind. I'm fucking in.
Fucking love this, dude. Let's just make a show of this.
A show of us talking about reasons we might steal chili from people in their own homes.
Yeah. We just run with whatever we did not agree upon.
We yes and too hard.
Just tell it's in. Just does not make sense. Just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the nonsense improv. Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, we're comedians.
That's definitely a thing people need. It's what comedians do, right?
Yeah.
Zing, zing. Yeah.
All right, let's shut the fuck up. Let's do the thing that we're actually good at.
Agreed. Thank you. So, Abe, I wanted to talk about a movie I'm sure both of us have watched a number of times. And that is the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I'm looking
Are you familiar?
at the poster right now. It's in my living room.
Yes. Oh, that's right. You have the poster in your living room.
He's like kicking back. He's got his hands behind his head, and he's like lounging on a non-existent couch with his face says, "I'm a cool guy."
It really does say that. I'm a cool guy. He is one of the most confident movie characters we've ever seen. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Right. So I've watched this movie a couple times recently, and I have this theory that I wanted to share with you.
Yeah.
And the theory is that the movie is so well directed up top, and that Ferris Bueller's character so perfectly defined that it actually stops being interesting after the first act. That this is a case where John Hughes,
Just
the writer
blew his
director of the
wad
movie,
right in the act
yes,
one.
that's exactly my theory. That John Hughes did an immaculate, amazing job directing this movie in the first act. So much so that the movie's actually not able to sustain the same energy and fun that it started, and kind of falls flat afterward.
Huh.
And I wanted to go through and do my proof for you, if you're willing.
I already have
to hear me
thoughts,
out.
but I'm gonna wait.
I'm excited. So, okay, the primary reason I say this is that the character of Ferris Bueller is made to feel essentially almost omnipotent, right? Like he has nearly zero problems, and we are so in his head and so convinced of his coolness and his ability to think ahead over everybody else that by the end of the movie, we don't really believe he's ever in any serious trouble, that he can never get in any serious trouble. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how John Hughes accomplished the first feat, which is to make us feel that a character is so cool and fun that he can't be beaten without making him an actual superhuman or something. And I wanted to sort of go through all the tactics that he used to do that. Okay. So the first one is that he uses POV shots. And by the way, he doesn't go back to the POV shots after the first act. He basically only uses them right up top. Okay, the first, maybe like the second or third shot of the movie.
It's already incorrect, but that's fine.
I'm not saying there is zero.
Okay,
I'm saying we don't go back to it as a trope very often after the first act.
Okay,
right? We do to it a lot less.
It's like
okay?
One of my favorite parts is the museum where Cameron looks at the painting, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Great.
I think that might be it. That might be it.
And you also might prove a point that I have later by bringing that up. So great.
Okay, cool.
So the POV shot. So the first and best example of the POV shot that we get is Ferris's parents looking down at him as he's pretending to be sick. Right. Basically, the most important thing that is going to happen in Ferris's day happens right up top, which is, do his parents believe that he is actually sick? And John Hughes, in order to get us into his mindset, gives us this point of view shot where we immediately see from Ferris's point of view how his parents view him, which is as like a child. They view him as a baby, right? Yep. A thing he totally uses to his advantage right away.
And it's shot like, like an ad for diapers where it's like, well, we're going to talk to the baby or something like that, like a 90s version of that ad.
Yes, it really is. And also, the point of view shot is a thing that really editorializes the person that we're looking at, right? It's a thing that directors use it a lot, but it has a very strong editorializing quality, particularly for the parents, right? Mm-hmm. Because the way it's shot, it feels like you're a baby and they're looking down at you from a crib.
Got it, yeah.
Right, that's what it feels like. The sister, we also see through a quasi point of view shot, and we get little pieces of who she is. We get her impatient little drumming of fingers on her skirt. We get her frowning face, and we know this is the only person who's going to be an actual problem for him. Nobody else, just him. Again, from the point of view shot. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now I wanted to just mention a thing because, Abe, you and I are comedy directors, and so you're going to appreciate this, I hope. We have a point of view shot of clouds.
Yeah.
We have a point of view shot of clouds after he gets away with like calling in sick, right? His parents believe him. He gets up, he goes out to his window, opens the shades, and he says, like, how can I be expected to stay inside on a day like this? And then we cut to 3 point of view shots of the clouds, and holy shit, are those funny shots. Each of those shots is amazing because the clouds are shitty. They're not that good at clouds.
They're just shitty, wispy clouds.
They're just wispy whatever clouds. That makes it so funny. It's like you would never shoot that. You would always shoot the big puffy, like,
look at these
full
clouds.
Of juice cloud.
Yeah.
Right. You'd never see that kind of cloud in a movie, right? And you're like, oh, John Hughes, you fucking hero. You already know what's funny, right?
The new
it's setting tone.
From John Hughes, clouds. Yeah. No, yeah, totally.
Right?
Because I think you're supposed to just get that it's not raining, but
right.
There's something funny to me about like a good insert shot.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect insert shot because it's like it's not an amazing day full of clouds. They're not like, wow, look at those clouds. It's whatever.
Yeah,
it's like a whatever clear day.
Like they also live in a place that is like that most days.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah,
it's so
I think
good.
that's the joke, kind of
funny.
like. You may not laugh at that originally when like just any normal viewer, but yeah, it's like when you think about it, he's just trying to line up an excuse to be like, I'm gonna play hooky. 100%. That's the whole point. 100%. I don't go to school because I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, you don't need to take Ferris Bueller at his word. You know what I mean? Like you can accept that he believes what he wants to believe. And these shots are not a proof that he's absolutely right. They're just a proof that he's going to get away with it. You know what I mean? And it's so perfect. we also get a point of view shot that is amazing. It's like not quite a point of view shot, but it's very close to one of Sloane when she gets taken out of class because Ferris gets her off with this big lie that her grandfather died. I think it's grandmother. And so this nurse takes her out and gives her this information. Listen, I'm sorry, I'm bearer of bad tidings. Your grandmother died. And then we cut to the reaction shot of Sloane that's basically a point of view shot. And her acting is so bad. It is fantastic. It's just
right.
It's just right. It's so
fake
funny.
crying. Yeah.
Yeah, the fake crying is fucking hilarious, right? Because none of these people are convincing at all. But the adults in this world are so stupid in a way that's like so utterly pleasing for us that like the point of view shots really sell. Yeah, they really sell the tone of the movie. Okay, so the next thing that John Hughes does that sort of makes Ferris Bueller into this omnipotent figure is direct-to-camera monologues.
Right.
Now, it's not like this never happens in movies, but it's so rare that I had a hard time
French
thinking
Lieutenant's
of another.
Woman, Deadpool.
Yeah.
That's
Yes, Deadpool.
like it.
Yeah, and I think Deadpool couldn't have done that without Ferris Bueller.
Mm-hmm.
I think like Ferris Bueller is actually very daring in a way because it's not like it invented the trope.
No,
but
it is lampooning the trope because the trope is very stuffy. If people want to look back to when that trope happened, you go to people like Jean-Luc Godard.
Right.
You go to like Breathless, where it's not exactly true, but it's like someone talking in monologue about like what's happening in like a very curt kind of like understated way that makes you realize they're watching the same thing we're watching, therefore the fourth wall has been broken. By doing this, he's basically saying like fuck those types of movies. I'm going to make it my own, and it's very punk rock, you know?
Yes, it is punk rock, which is a thing that we're going to come back to in a minute because punk rock is a really important piece of this movie.
Right.
It also tells us that Ferris Bueller is aware of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like that means that he has a power that no one else in this movie has.
Oh yeah.
He has the power to say, I'm also aware this is a movie and I'm going to give you some information now because why not? Because I can. Right? So he's already instantly so much more powerful than anybody he's going to encounter that there's never going to be any real tension for him the rest of the film. Okay, so also the way that the direct-to-camera monologues are used sort of make him unassailable as a protagonist. One way is he gives us all these like philosophical moments, like especially in the first act, or like he says like a person should never believe in an ism, right? Like I believe that one person should believe in himself, and then he quotes some stuff and he says, "Still not going to get me a car," because like basically his only problem in life, he doesn't have a car.
He doesn't have a car.
If he did, that's it. That's his only problem. Right?
It's because it's like it's Holden Caulfield thoughts. It's it's just to ignite a younger generation to be like, yeah, you also have you're starting to form complexities.
Correct.
So you have thoughts on isms, but you also have problems with like not being an adult, and that's also a stupid thought. But we're not gonna shove that in your face, so you can enjoy the fucking movie.
He makes that really funny line about like it's pointless and somewhat childish. Like when he's talking about licking his palms to convince his parents that he had clammy hands. It's pointless and childish, but then again, so's high school, right? It's like, and that's a very Holden Caulfield point of view, which is pretty great. He also, basically whenever he has these philosophical conversations, or even like a really sweet moment with his dad, he's just like so obsessed with his teenage problems that he blows that stuff like right aside, right? He has that phone call with his dad who's like, listen, I love you, pal. Like it ends with this very sweet moment with his dad, and he like hangs up the phone. And he's like, "I can't believe Cameron's not listening to me." Like just blows right past this thing that's just very funny and meaningful in most other movies. You know?
I mean, because he's a self-interested dick.
He's selfish. But I'm not here to shit on the guy because like I'm not trying to like do the Ferris Bueller's actually the devil. Like I'm not interested in that take.
I mean, you kind of already know, but he's fun. Right. Just like Deadpool is insufferable.
Right.
But it's fun. He's just having a goof,
Again, like, see, the only other way we would accept this kind of character is when he's somebody like Deadpool, who is legitimately a superhero. You know? That's an interesting problem. Like, we couldn't see... I mean, we could, but we don't really see other high school movies or other movies about normal people who have this amount of control over the narrative.
I don't know. I think this trope and this movie gave birth to the... Now I know what you're thinking. You know, the intro.
Right.
Like, I saw it recently on the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. You know, it's just like, it's the thing that, like, it's a cliche at this point because it also allows you to do exposition and explanation really fast. So it's like a writer's crutch, but it's also a very transparent way to make you like endearing toward a character because they're speaking directly to you. They're not in a situation, you are with them.
Correct.
That's neither here nor there. The point is, you can be an asshole and still do this trick, as we've proven with like the source material. Because I think like Ferris Bueller's Day Off is like kind of, if we're all to say like what's that trope all about and where did it kind of start, it's more or less this, because this is what was big enough to make it in our perspective, in our minds.
It's that formative,
right?
Like it's that formative. Of
like Guillermo del Toro didn't invent steampunk,
right.
He made it in our heads. Now,
correct.
Why we all know and can use the word steampunk and know what we mean. Pre Guillermo del Toro, that was only a small niche of people. I think that Ferris Bueller's the same way to this type of trope.
Agreed. I totally agree with that. Okay, so just a couple other tactics that John Hughes uses to empower Ferris Bueller. So another one is that, especially in the first act, he has a lot of shots where in the foreground is a person talking, and in the background is something happening that is actually Ferris manipulating the circumstances. And that thing is usually out of focus, right? So he uses sort of depth of field stuff to establish that in the background of all these scenes is Ferris Bueller manipulating everybody and everything to his purpose, right? Okay, so the best version of it is the hacking scene with Ed Rooney, where Ed is on the phone with Ferris's mother saying, like, yeah, you know, he's been absent 9 times. I'm going to have to hold him back. You know, like, you better get your kid under control. And then we look at the computer screen, which is being manipulated in the background out of focus, and realize Ferris has hacked it, which, by the way, how? He's hacked the computer and eliminated 7 of his 9 absences. You know, amazing, right? There's another incredible shot that I'm not sure was planned, but it's just great, that is basically a single of Cameron in his car debating whether or not to go over to Ferris's because he's quote-unquote sick, right? And Ferris does a lot of manipulation to Cameron to get him to get there.
Right.
So Cameron starts the car, and he's like, this is ridiculous. Oh, he's going to keep calling me. I'll go. No, I'm going to go. And then he's like, no, I'm not going to go. So he gets out of the car, and we have this wide shot where he gets out of the car. And then we cut back to the empty driver's seat. And in the background,
it's a beautiful shot. It's a great,
really good,
effective shot.
It's so effective because it tells you that it's actually him acting out what Ferris is doing to him.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's so perfectly done and so artistically done.
And it's a cool thing because we all are wise as audience members that if you're locked into focus on something, you want my attention to be there. And when it's an empty seat, we already know Cameron's going to take the seat. We're going for a ride, baby. The movie's going to happen. You know, it's like it's so telegraphing to us. Before he's made his decision, we know the decision has been made. Why?
Correct.
Because like the fourth wall break with Ferris Bueller, he runs this movie.
Yep, he runs this movie. That's exactly correct. So, okay. Now I want to move on to another director tactic that I find particularly interesting. And I bet you do too, because we've had debates about this a lot in private.
Oh?
Yeah, we have. This is about how you block and shoot a scene. Oh. So I want to do a little bit of education for the audience. So blocking a scene means it's what you tell the actors to physically do during the course of a scene, where you tell them to move, whether they sit down, whether they stand, where they're standing, that kind of stuff. That's all called blocking, right? The physical actions of an actor in a scene. So in the first act, Ferris has a whole bunch of like little segments, things he wants to say. They're all one-shot, self-contained, blocked segments. For instance, the shower. The shower has like 4 different pieces, and in each piece of the shower,
Do you mean he like
does
pauses what he's doing and like takes a moment to give an aside direct to camera? Is that what you mean?
Yes, or I mean, yes, it's partly that. I also partly mean the only purpose for this whole action and one shot is to give this single line or this single thought, and then it's over.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, the line that everybody remembers probably most from Ferris Bueller is "Life moves."
Damn it! I was gonna say it. It's life moves pretty fast, huh?
yeah. So that shot, that line is actually split into 2, and the first part of the line.
It is.
I think it is. I might be wrong. It might be the whole thing in one shot. It doesn't matter. So either way, what happens is it's literally him walking by us. Like he walks in the hallway to the shower and he says, "Life moves by pretty fast." I'm pretty sure he gets into the next shot before he says, "If you don't stop and watch, you'll miss."
Yes, he does.
Right.
I think he's in the shower at that point.
Yes, right. Meaning that each piece of this is specifically chosen by Ferris for us to see. See, right? So like he is deciding when he gives us information and what information he gives us.
And camera has to move for him.
Correct. And if you doubt that, it's most obvious after he does the Mohawk singing thing when he sings Dankeschön in the shower, and he's looking at us while he's washing up, and then he puts his hand up in front of camera.
Yes, because he's washing his balls.
Because he's washing his balls, right? Which means you're not allowed to see this. The rest of it, you were allowed to see. This, you're not.
Which also shows that some element wasn't planned, so it's like... It's quirky because he's like, yeah, he's in control, and he's like a god, but he's also kind of winging it, you know?
Right. Yeah, totally. Like he's shooting from the hip, but he's so good that he's allowed to do that. So it's fucking fantastic, right?
Yeah, it's very
so good.
well done. It's very effective. It knows what it is doing.
So, I talked a little bit about the shower sequence. I'll move on from that piece. The entire conversation that he has with Cameron, when we meet Cameron, who's in bed, and like, I'm so sick and I'm dying, etc., right? Ferris is sitting in a swimsuit, lounging with hula music behind him, always one step ahead of Cameron. We never go back to that place or tone or setup.
Can I tell you though? Well, it's because it's Ferris Bueller's movie, and that's Cameron. I think the introduction of Cameron is just as if not more on point. It's definitely shorter because Ferris Bueller's just a whirlwind of language, so he's constantly talking. But Cameron just singing with the non-diegetic sound that's happening. He is actually doing the same thing Ferris is doing, but he's using it to be depressed because that music is not being played on his radio.
Just singing.
He's singing what we're hearing, where he goes let my
Cameron go.
Yeah. And it's just so evocative of what Cameron is, which is just he's down in the dumpies. He's not, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm Cameron. That's all we needed. And we're off to the races. I think it's more to your point because it's like Hughes can do this with any type of effervescent character. I guess effervescent's the wrong word because I wouldn't say Cameron is effervescent, but direct or clear character. He can do this with them, and he's showing you, here's me having fun with Ferris and how I do this. Look, I can just turn on Cameron for 45 seconds and I can do it in 45 seconds. He's calling a shot. He's he's fucking Babe Ruth calling a shot. And then it's right after hitting a home run, he's just and real quick, just throw me another one, just real quick. Yeah, that one's gone too. He's just knocking them out.
They really are such strong and concise, perfect character introductions. Now, I want to talk about Cameron a little bit later, but I'll say one of my major points now, which I'll get into a little bit more detail later. Most of the sort of internet meta narrative about Ferris Bueller is that Cameron is actually the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
Cameron has the narrative, and Cameron, Ferris is a figment of Cameron's imagination, etc.
Sure.
And it all basically boils down to this introduction. This introduction is the fertile soil of this theory because he's the first person that has a real problem in the movie.
Yeah, he's also the one who changes over the movie.
Yes, he is the only one that changes.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that they share this one trait, which is that they are aware of the movie, because Cameron's a little aware of the movie, is what makes people in their brains think, oh, maybe Ferris is actually a figment of Cameron's imagination. Maybe that's a narrative thread, right? Like this is not a thing that some clever fan had invented out of nowhere. This is a thing that has a little bit of proof in the movie because of how Hughes directed it. You know, like that decision actually could spring forth that fan theory. I don't believe that, but it's an interesting
I don't
fan
give a
theory.
fuck about that theory.
I know, I don't either, and I don't want to spend forever talking about it.
He is the protagonist, and that there's no denying that.
I think he's
depending on your definition of protagonist, but it should be pretty clear what a protagonist is. But yeah, what you're saying.
I think just according to movie definition, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that more in a little bit, but that's true. So, okay, I'm going to move on to just my summary of this blocking thing that I'm telling you about, because it happens all throughout the first act. Mm-hmm. I've given you just a couple examples, is that it's a way of describing the absolute control Ferris has over everyone else and information. And the perfect summary of it is the moment that he plays the sick... like all those sick sound effects on the keyboard to the Blue Danube by Strauss, right? It's first of all, it's amazing. It's iconic. Everybody remembers it, but he plays that song. It's a classic song. And it's literally the way that he's convincing people he's sick, and he's playing it for entertainment and looks at us as he plays it and goes, right? He's like literally selling us like, see what I can do. Yeah, that's what he can do. Right? He can play everybody with his little tools. It's amazing. Okay. Yeah. So this other thing, I just thought you in particular would love this. This movie, if I remember correctly, has only one dolly shot in it. At least I don't remember another dolly shot, but in the first act, there's only one. It has one dolly shot, and it's the moment that Ed Rooney is making fun of who he believes to be Ferris Bueller, who's lying to him about Sloane's dead grandmother, and he's like, wheel her old ass corpse down here. And then his secretary says, Ferris Bueller's on line 2. And there's an amazing dolly shot into his face,
into
sting,
Jeffrey Jones's fucking face,
with that great sting, like the bang, like where it's like you fucked up, and it's one of the
up now. Yeah, it's a wonderful shot. It's a great shot. It's a great. It's not the only dolly in the movie, but it's the only dolly used in that
way.
Is it? Huh?
Oh yeah, I don't remember the other dollies.
In the museum again, when they're walking laterally against the paintings and acting like art.
Yes.
People, I guess, correct critics.
Yeah, the museum is kind of the only place in the rest of the movie where Hughes gets a little trickier with camera.
I think he's hearkening to this. I think you're so far your theory holds water, because my theory about that is that the museum is a nice little respite of home where we get a little bit more introspective. We can nothing happens, we take a beat, and we remind ourselves who each of these characters are.
Yes,
so
correct.
He's going to use in his bag of tricks, and John Hughes's employ, the camera tricks and the editorial strategies that he's using in the first act to introduce us to the characters. So we once again feel like Ferris is still Ferris, Cameron's still Cameron.
Right. That's thank you, because that's a thing I didn't put together, but you did it. You are helping me out, and I appreciate it.
I did it.
You did it. So look, okay, so the first major point that I've made here are the directing tactics that John Hughes uses to establish Ferris Bueller's control. Now, I want to talk about the tactics that John Hughes uses to sort of brand the tone of the movie, because those are the two things that are the most important things to take away from the first act of the movie. Right. Ferris Bueller's power and the tone of the movie.
Because, specifically that it's it's for young people, and the audience it's for, right?
Right, because we're going to learn you're going to learn why basically after the first act there's never going to be any real trouble in this movie again. Mm-hmm. It's like a good thing that has a bad outcome. So this movie is explicitly for youngs. Okay, and how do you know that?
Yeah.
It's because like the first thing that happens after Ferris says, "I can't believe they bought it," is the MTV logo. Like just like MTV logo, here we go, right? And at that point in time, 1986, that was no longer a cynical trope. That was a new trope.
Oh yeah,
Right?
that was
So, like-
that wasn't. We ain't Bill and Ted, you know.
Right, exactly. That's like putting a brand on your shoulder. Boom, this is a Gen X movie. You know what I mean? Like anybody older than 30, this isn't for you. This is for kids. You know, and it's perfect because it absolutely does the work that it's supposed to do. And then the next thing that happens is a music montage, and that music montage is to like pretty aggressive music where he describes his entire worldview and his problem, which is I need a car. Right? His worldview is childish and young, even though it surveys the entirety of human history and how stupid high school is, etc. His problem needs a car, right? So there it is. So there's that. Now, the second thing is, in terms of tone, every single adult that we meet in this movie is an idiot. They're all absolutely stupid, okay? So, and in different ways. So like his parents, we meet them through that POV shot, and they're completely naive, and they don't see their son for who he is, right? They're stupid, they're naive, they're so sweet, they're not a threat, okay? The teachers that we meet, all of whom are incredible, have forgotten how to communicate to another human being. They don't understand anymore how to make a young person find the subject they're teaching interesting.
Because that's how young people feel about adults. Yeah.
Right, of course. But like these people are detached on a level that's like inhuman.
Right.
And Ben Stein has so many fucking awesome lines that are right, Bueller, and also anyone. Like, every time he keeps saying anyone, it's great. And we cut to that series of close-ups. There's a series of student close-ups that's some of my favorite acting in any comedy movie ever. It's like
it's
just
like
a bunch
of Breakfast Club.
Yes, but it's so good and like a portrait and amazing. There's like one guy with like reddish hair whose eyes are red in a way that makes me think he actually sat there for an hour and a half without blinking.
Yeah,
trying to figure out how he can stay awake for this guy.
Which
and
I think you're supposed to believe that he smokes all the weed in the world.
Yeah, probably. But it's like it's so well acted. It's the kind of thing that you and I would watch at a monitor and we couldn't handle for more than 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because it's so funny what he's doing. And that's amazing directing. Like it truly is amazing directing because he gives us these little paintings of how young people feel about adults. And they're all so funny and great and rewarding. So yeah, the teachers are morons. And most importantly, Ed Rooney, who's the principal,
right.
Feels inferior. He is effectively the same to Ferris Bueller as his sister.
Well, it's Roadrunner.
Yes, he's Wile E. Coyote trying to catch the Roadrunner. That's correct. Which is to say that it's not that he's threatened by Ferris Bueller; it's that he's resentful of Ferris Bueller.
Yes. Like
if Ferris Bueller gets to be a person he doesn't get to be.
It really gets his goat. Yeah. He
and it really
hates
gets
his way
goat.
of life. He hates everything about him. Yeah, exactly.
Correct. And we know that he's stupid because he's so thoroughly outmatched in every single way by Ferris Bueller that even though he's introduced to us as, kind of like Dirty Harry by his idiot secretary, we know because of how much she's incredible, because of how much he collapses under the weight of like one little move by Ferris Bueller, this man is not a real threat.
No.
And consequently, he is the only person in the movie that provides a real threat to Ferris Bueller, and he is completely inept after the first act. And he spends most of the rest of the movie getting his ass kicked. Like that's all that happens to him is he like wrongly accuses people and gets bitten by dogs and spit on and his stuff torn to shreds, and that's it. Right? It's perfect.
Yeah.
So also just a quick note, when we meet his secretary, she pulls 3 pencils out of her hair.
Oh yeah,
she pulls 3.
Comedy in threes, baby. 3 pencils.
It's really good.
Funnier than
really
one
good.
pencil.
Right. So okay, so we've branded this movie as for young people, right? Now the second thing is the movie is branded as Ferris wants to teach us his ways.
Right, he's a prophet.
So, yes, for those of you who are this movie is for, come, I will teach you my path, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's partly done by the text on screen when he's like, literally, how do you call in sick? Like he does that. Then there's this piece where he has the mohawk in the shower. Now, the mohawk in the shower is fantastic because it tells us that he's a Gen Xer, right? He's not a baby boomer. He's not a kid. He's not an adult playing a kid. He's a legit Gen Xer, and he's like interested in young people things, but he's singing a song that's a classic song, which is to say Ferris Bueller's power is that he knows the good stuff from the old days and likes it, right? But he's still a young person. So like he can sing a Beatles song later on. He can play the Blue Danube, right? He's
wise beyond his years.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. When he picks the car that's his perfect car.
It's a classic car. Yeah.
Yes, it's a 1961 Ferrari.
Ooh. Right?
So, Ferris is a wise prophet to us Gen Xers, right? Or younger.
Right. He gives us the confidence because when you're a kid and you do dumb shit and you're like, I want to wear a mohawk. Why? Because I'm trying to figure myself out. We are stepping into the unknown, and we are very self-critical and very fearful that other people are going to criticize us for our lack of knowledge, which we know we don't have a lot of. That's a part of being youthful. But the fact that he has the superpower of knowing all of the past means so when someone points out to us young kids that we don't understand things and then they have a good argument, we can just look to Ferris, and Ferris is going to save us with his ability to also combat when necessary the powers that be because of his knowledge. And we go yep, that guy's, we also can have that guy too. We can also be you don't understand us, but we understand you.
Right. He is Master Splinter, and we are the Ninja Turtles. Mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. He's the one who is so good at this that he can actually teach us how to do it, which is what's happening in this movie.
Such an asshole. Yeah.
I know. And therefore, if he's going to be the teacher, he's not going to learn anything.
No. Yeah,
he's the one who knows it all already. Correct. Yes, right. We're making
cool
that case.
Wise man. He's like old wise man with the skateboard.
Yes, he is. That's exactly what he is. Even when he tries to play the clarinet, he wears an old guy's outfit, et cetera, et cetera.
And everything he does, especially when he turns on the old stuff, he acts like Abe Froman. He does, you said, sings the Beatles song. He does this thing where he's sarcastic while doing it, which is very apparent, very important to the youth. Because it's a tale as old as time. Because I saw once I got self-aware enough and I look back at what I did as a kid, when I see the next generation or people who are younger than me, even people born in 1996 or something like that, I see how they love that sarcasm because they don't know what they feel about it, and that's fine. But if you don't know how you feel about something, you just have a negative reaction to it. Sarcasm is the perfect response because it means you can be sarcastic and it knows that it's slightly, you don't have to say what you think about something, but you also at the same time can have fun with it and treat it like it's not important because that's what it is to you, not important. So if you know how to sing Donkashane, you can do that. And also feel he knows these things, but at the same time, it's not real that he likes that song, though. Not necessarily.
No.
He always has that
know
out
it
because it's sarcastic.
Right. He can know it, but he doesn't have to love it because he's too young to. He's too in on what's cool right now to like that old stuff for real.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Okay, so the next thing, and this is important for tone, is that Ferris Bueller is impossible. Physically impossible. Here's what I mean by that. So obviously he can read people's minds, right? He knows what Cameron is thinking. He calls Cameron right when he says out loud that I forget the line that he has, right? But I think I'm dying, and then he calls him and says you're not dying, you just can't think of anything good to do, right? He can read his mind. He knows when to call Rooney right when Rooney wants to talk to Sloane's father. Get me George Peterson on the phone. Oh, he's already on line 2. He already knows, right? he hacks the computer, et cetera, et cetera. So he's omniscient. That's the first problem. The second problem is that he appears in like 5 or 6 or more totally separate outfits in the first act. Like within an hour's time, he has changed outfits and situations 5 or 6 times simply for a joke or to illustrate something or to react to another character. Right? Like he changes to a weird hipster outfit for that one clarinet joke.
Yeah,
or
I know what you mean, because like it's we do that all the time in movies.
Totally.
But this
not
is for
like
an
this.
effect, a specific effect.
Correct. Right.
It's not just to get another costume in. It's to it's to show that he's like a chameleon.
Right, but it's not just, yes, it is that, but it's also to show that like he is a chameleon on a level that like other people can't be. Like he's beyond what other people can do because he's movie guy.
He has the ability to take very hard things to be, like a fashion designer, or
Correct.
able to ape the idea of being Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago,
Correct.
or sing on a Macy Days parade. He has the ability and technical knowledge to do all these things. That's impossible.
Yes. It's impossible, and just the amount of time it would take to do it. It's impossible.
And he's like,
right?
what? He's like supposed to be 17?
Yeah, he's a senior in high school.
Yeah.
So no, and also just the sheer effort involved in all these costume changes is like just to make a point or a joke, Yeah, I just like it's a thing you never notice until you're like, my God, how many different like situations has he been in already?
Yeah.
Because he's basically
You've
a
led
sketch
an interesting
character.
life, Ferris.
Right. He's basically a sketch character.
Yeah, he is.
Everyone else is in a movie. He's in a sketch. Anyway, so he's also able to literally control the information at his school, like his friends have about him, from what seems like a payphone. Like he can just call a payphone, and like the school has exactly the message he wants them to have. Right? And but I think my favorite example of his omnipotence is like his physical impossibility is we're introduced to a freshman who's like, oh man, he's gonna get me out of summer school.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
And like
freshman.
that's like his legitimate
like
relationship.
which means that at some
How?
point he had a conversation with them where he's like hanging with them, like he spent
Yes.
a day hanging out with them.
Yes. Right. They love him. That wouldn't have happened. Also, how's he going to get him out of summer school? And nobody, including you, the audience member, says, no, he won't. You know what I mean? Like, you just believe, sure, of course he
I
will.
have met people who have like protean like circles of friends, like where it's like,
Totally.
where are they hanging out? I don't know. He seems to be hanging out with that. But the rest of us have this agreement that at brunch at a break we hang out with each other, and it's always the same, and it happens every day, and it's like that's normal people. And I have seen not normal people who do that kind of stuff, but it's true that he's all of these things on top of each other. It's crazy.
Yes. So my next point is just sort of a fun little piece of filmmaking that I wanted to like mention for people to like appreciate how succinctly and clearly John Hughes as a director is able to communicate who his characters are. So, like, we meet Ferris Bueller, and it's basically through all their establishing shots. Each character gets an establishing shot, and it's usually just one, but it might be one or two. It's usually just one that tells you exactly where they come from and almost everything you need to know about who they are.
The place they exist.
Yes, Ferris Bueller's is that perfect, manicured, quintessentially American, homey family, like sort of half mansion, right? It's a really nice house. It's homey, it's American, it's perfect. That's where he comes from. You know Ferris is going to be just fine, right? Cameron,
trust fund baby.
Yes, Cameron lives in an extraordinarily wealthy, modern glass museum. It looks uncomfortable, and it looks like the kind of thing an alien would live in, right? And it's beautiful.
Extremely rich, yeah.
It's extremely rich and beautiful, but also alienating. And you know exactly who he is just from that one shot.
I've known people like that, and they are depressed.
Yes.
So
That's correct.
Like it's all 1-to-1. Like
That's correct. Ed Rooney, we meet him on the phone through a series of images of students rushing to class, which is to say that everybody else is terrified of Ed Rooney, right? It's supposed to set him up as a villain, but the problem is that Ferris Bueller so thoroughly disposes of him when we actually meet him that it doesn't matter.
Right.
Right? It doesn't matter. And there's like, I'm going to leave it at that. Sloane is introduced in a shot where we're looking at a bunch of different students who are sort of just listening to this boring teacher, and she's not the subject of the shot, which is to say she's introduced.
That's great, actually. I didn't ever pick that up.
Yeah, she's introduced
she's
as
the
just
identity
one of the crowd.
character.
Yes, she's one of the crowd.
That makes
She's a
total
person-
sense because she's got the least personality.
Correct.
And that's what happens with identity characters.
Correct. She's a person who, if it hadn't been for Ferris being involved in her life, would have led a normal life. Like, Ferris is the only thing magical about her.
You fucking Ron Weasley.
I know. I know. It's brutal.
It's perfect. I mean, that's how the triad works. It's a tried and true method. And there it is.
So all of this, what I've done now is I've gone through all the tactics that John Hughes uses to set up this movie, right? But the problem is that Ferris Bueller only needs one thing, and that is, if only I could have a car. I could have this day off. Well, the problem is he gets the car at the end of the first act. He gets the car. Like, he gets it from Cameron, and they take off from the school having successfully duped Ed Rooney, and then Ferris never has any trouble again because John Hughes has gone to such lengths to show how fun, how funny, how interesting, how powerful this character is that once he's finally gotten away with his day off and has his car, it doesn't matter what happens with his day off. He's already solved his problem, which is why the rest of the movie is actually about Cameron, because Cameron has a much deeper problem. Right now, that's not to say that Ferris Bueller doesn't have. Ferris Bueller has a problem in the third act of getting home on time.
When does he get his car? Is it like the midpoint? Or no, it's earlier than that.
It's the end of the first act.
That's Act 2 break. Okay.
Yes,
Or
he
Act 1
gets the
break.
car.
Okay.
He gets the car to pick up Sloane, and they drive off to a musical montage, and that moment is the end of the first act. It's like a perfectly filmed movie.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like the end of the first act. It's like, oh, now we're off on our adventure.
The midpoint is the car doesn't work.
The midpoint, I think, is that they get back and the mileage is too high.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes.
Sorry, that's
the mileage is
work.
too high.
I meant that there's a problem with the car. Yeah.
Right. So the problem is, again, John Hughes has done such an effective job of selling us the fun character of Ferris Bueller that he's undermined the possibility that Ferris will ever get caught on this day off, which means the rest of the movie has to have a narrative journey about somebody else. And that somebody else is Cameron, right? But it also presents some other problems. One problem is that the movie has no tension in terms of Ferris's relationship with Sloane. Do you believe, based on how these characters are set up, that Ferris is actually going to marry Sloane? Do you, Abe, believe that?
No.
I don't either, because Ferris Bueller is such a manipulative person.
Yeah,
I don't think
he's
needs,
too much of an asshole.
He doesn't need to believe anything that he says.
I think he's a sociopath a little bit, and therefore he wants to be.
He wants to believe that. Right.
I actually think that the realization, like, if we were really gonna go dark, what would happen is he would marry Sloane, and then he would they would both sleep on each other because they would be unhappy.
Yes,
because they would change
be the actual
because they're
end.
so.
Right.
And Sloane is much wiser than he is, actually.
Correct.
Because she's like, as she says in the pool, like, she knows what's up. She knows that aspect of him. She's just enjoying the ride.
Correct.
She knows that they're not going to get married. She basically says as much.
I think she sees him. She's the only person who sees him for what he really is. Which is I think intended by the writer to imply that makes her a good match for him. But the problem is that Ferris Bueller at this point in his life is such a potent figure that it doesn't matter that she sees him for who he is.
Right. Plus, when you're 17...
Right.
I mean,
he's
we're playing
still a
in
teenager.
this real weird space where we're supposed to... Like, they're so already people that like that isn't what 17 is for a lot of Americans at the time, going through this experience, these types of experiences, watching these kinds of movies, that they wouldn't be able to answer these questions. So the fact that he's an asshole is because he's an adult in terms of his manipulation. He would never be in the situation. If he was in the situation, he would be a sociopath. So I'm not saying that he is a sociopath because there's proof in the filmmaking that he's a sociopath. And likewise, I don't think that Sloane is wise beyond her years because of anything that they just play archetypes of actually adults.
Right.
They're
imitating
like
adults.
Kids.
Which is a thing that they do in the movie too.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sloane, for instance, plays a mysterious woman at a moment's notice to Ferris's father. Right? Ferris's father sees them in a taxi cab across the way, and then he looks back like, wait, was that my son? And it's just Sloane sitting up there, and then Ferris down below tickles her, and she laughs like this sensuous woman. Now, what's interesting about that, aside from what you said and how it validates what you said, is that his father doesn't even know who she is.
Yeah,
Ferris's father does not know her.
Doesn't, yeah.
You know, like,
and they're
so, like,
talking
what?
about getting married.
Right. What?
So,
like, yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, I mean, I understand his father's a dope, but like, not that much of a dope.
Not that much of a dope. He's like saying stuff like, I love you, son. You know, like he's cognizant.
Right.
He isn't aloof and like a Hook dad or something like that.
Right. And see, thank you for bringing up Hook again. No, I just want the audience to know Abe and I had a long debate about whether we could talk about Hook on this show, and hope remains whether one day.
You make it sound like it's like Hook's off limits. No more Hook.
I'm not having any Hook in this film.
No, it wasn't that. It was just if it made sense.
Yeah. It's all right. I don't want to waste everyone's time. But I love the fact that we keep coming back to Hook. Yeah. So the point being that, but again, this is an artifact of the fact that John Hughes made such a perfectly and fun executed character that we don't believe him anymore. You know what I mean? Like, he's so good that we don't believe him anymore. We don't believe he can love Sloane. We don't believe he's going to get in any trouble. We don't believe that Ed Rooney can ever catch him. We don't believe that he ever would stand up for Cameron at the end when he's like, Cameron, I'm going to take it. That when the car gets wrecked or whatever, I'll take it. And of course he's not going to actually take it because Ferris Bueller couldn't take it. He's Ferris Bueller.
Hats off. I mean, hats off to Broderick. Hats off to Hughes too, because the way he delivers his, like, when he's finally backed into that corner.
Yes.
The way he delivers it is with such unbridled confidence.
Yes.
But also the eyes of a little boy.
Yes.
And it's almost like, I don't know how they figured it out. Maybe Broderick is just a genius, but I actually think it's Hughes. Because remember, Matthew Broderick is also young when he's doing this role. It's a very complex thing because he is saying everything like he's like, no. It's the good thing. Like, it's not the bad thing. Like, that's what he's trying to say to his friends.
Right.
But at the same instance, he doesn't believe himself.
No.
It's so thoroughly but he wants you to believe him. It's like that. Like, it's not that he's manipulating them because he's like, if I get them to believe that I am this, then this XYZ will happen and I'll get the precious money or whatever. Like, no, it's because he's a little rat in a cage and he needs so much for them to believe him because so much of his personal worth is based on his support system and the idea that everyone thinks that he's likable.
Correct.
So the second that he's unlikable, he freaks the fuck out and turns into a child.
Correct.
And I don't know how much of that is Broderick doing a performance of that, or that's just how all young people are, because that's just how all young people are.
It's a really cool, I mean, first of all, Matthew Broderick had won a Tony by this time, I believe.
Yeah.
Like, he'd had a stage career, which is a thing people forget. It seemed like
he
came out of nowhere.
What do you win the Tony for?
I forgot. It's some stage play, but he was the lead in it, I believe. I could be wrong. I didn't do detailed research on this. But just on that point, Abe, isn't it kind of fun to think that the movie Election is actually a sequel to Ferris Bueller?
Yeah, that's great. That's fucking great. Yeah.
This is who he became. Yeah. And it is who he would become.
because of the cyclic nature of
Yes.
because he the best years of his life were fucking high school.
Right, of course. And like I don't think that John Hughes is necessarily trying to like imply that Ferris Bueller's life's going to be awful out of high school.
No, I don't think so.
I think that's
you're
our
supposed to-
cynicism toward a creature like
You're
Ferris
supposed
Bueller.
to leave it. It's a closed system.
Yeah. It's a closed system. That's what you're supposed to think. But also, like, I've lived some life, and so have you. And the fact of the matter is, Election would make a pretty good sequel.
It would
to
make
Ferris
a great
Bueller,
sequel.
right?
Yeah,
It really would, because that's what actually happens. Anyway, I could labor this on and on, but I think I've made my main point, which is to say that this is one of those cases where the writer and director had such a great idea about a character and had so much fun to deliver that idea that the movie couldn't sustain it. And consequently, we get a lot more sort of meandering, just sort of hanging out with them on their day off, watching Ed Rooney totally fuck up as a detective, until finally Cameron's ready to have a real problem, or until finally Ferris Bueller actually has to get home. Right? Those are basically the two remaining tension points, and they aren't around for most of the second act of the movie. Right? And that's
why would they be?
Yeah, why would they be? And so this is why people have all these fan theories about Cameron. I think you could make an argument that Ferris Bueller has to grow as a friend, and that's why the movie is actually about him being a better friend to Cameron. Mm-hmm. And you could make that argument that he goes through a change there, but I don't think the movie feels like he went through a change there.
We haven't witnessed him learning a lesson. We've witnessed him getting told off about the lesson.
I mean, he does.
Like, this is what you need to do, Ferris, is different from, I've internalized that information, I go off into the world and I do, and I'm different now.
I think the writer wanted us to believe that when Ferris volunteers to take the blame for the car,
you do feel that it's genuine.
Yeah, you feel that it's genuine, which is to say that he's grown. But I think, unfortunately,
he's going to try.
Right, but unfortunately the power of Cameron's angst and the power of Ferris Bueller as guy who can never be caught, because otherwise it wouldn't be his day off, are just, they sort of overpower that narrative, right?
Yeah.
Which is why, for the most part, John Hughes tries to distract us from this problem with like bigger and bigger stunts, right? It's why Ferris Bueller joins a parade downtown singing Twist and Shout, and why they get caught on television catching a baseball game at the Cubs game, right? Or baseball at the Cubs game. Or why they have
a rock star.
They have that amazing art montage that everybody brings up, and it's great.
Because life moves pretty fast, and he's running and running and running, so he doesn't have to stop and think about himself. That's the kind of arc that we're talking about. So that's where the pessimism kind of about what might be occurred to the character later in life. That's where it comes from, obviously. I think, and more to your point, because you said early on about like the first act was like where all the shit occurs.
Pretty much.
And like you're kind of making a point of like, also if you watch the movie, the camera gets more generic as time goes on.
Most of these tactics disappear, if not entirely, but then for the most part, after he gets the car.
I just wanted to address, I think there's something about sustainability about films, and it's like directors have ultimate power of their movie. That doesn't mean they have ultimate power. They can't ever, like, they found a great idea in Ferris and a great like trope to play with. We would get tired of if the movie was all of that. So like,
correct.
Obviously you can't be amazing all the time. It's why we should forgive and be more forgiving of films, in my opinion, of things like smaller plot holes that don't break the fundamental arcs at play, but are just like, but how did they get there? Like, well, I thought that, like, that would be a long time to run to get there. It's just like, all right, man. It's like I'm trying my best to like weave an entertaining thing. Sometimes I have to turn my head a little bit over.
Let us have fun, and that's the best thing about Ferris Bueller.
Exactly.
And so it's fun.
Allow it to be generic, and I don't. And I think you're saying this, but if it hasn't been said already, I think it's not that the first act is so stellar and the rest of it is not. That's a weird dichotomy to set on the film. I think what you're saying, or at least I think you're saying, and definitely what I would prefer to say, would be something closer to the evocative aspects of the first act is what propels our enjoyment of this classic movie, and why it became like a mainstay in terms of, the Hughes filmography and, obviously being in the zeitgeist. And it can't sustain that all the time,
Correct.
but it's why it's well known, because it's such a fervently great idea.
Yeah, it's not the best movie for delivering the tension of will he or won't he get away with it, but it's the best movie for like just having a rad tone and character intro. The likes of which...
it's not like the idea or the writing is... the writing is good. It's not like the idea of it is great. Like, it's not, a guy who just wants to get out of school and it's kind of got like a Roadrunner situation with his... Like, no. That's not what's reinventing the wheel. What's reinventing the wheel is the absolute charisma of the main character. And Hughes' ability to translate that to your brain.
It's Hughes, right. It really is John Hughes that made a character that memorable. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because like, there's been a lot of people, especially in the 80s, that tried to make the coolest guy in school. Right. Like, but none of them ever stood up to Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller is the American icon of coolest guy in school.
I remember it's remade every generation or so. It's remade, and what sucks is that we got like, it was a little definitely late for you, a little late for me, because there's just a few years separation. But like, Van Wilder is that, and he sucks.
He just doesn't hold a candle
Gen
to Ferris
Xers
Bueller.
got fucking Ferris Bueller, and
they did.
Fuck off. Like, we got shitty movie versions of it.
Xers can complain all they want, but they got Nirvana and they got Ferris Bueller. Those are two pretty good things. So they better settle down.
Sure.
They better settle down.
Yeah, man. That is definitely why that movie works, and it is.
Yeah.
I thought you did a very good job of dissecting it for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy approaching a movie, and maybe the audience will find this fun in their lives, or maybe they won't. I try to approach a movie that I know I like if I'm going to rewatch it, and ask myself, like, well, why do I like this? Like, what is it about this that sort of stuck with me? And not do like a self-analysis, but do analysis of the movie.
Yeah, what is it doing to trick me?
Yeah, what's it doing? Right, and that's
not
what
in
led
a mean way, but like in the way that film directors do.
Right, and that's what led me to rewatch this, because it was like, boy, Ferris Bueller just fucking rules. And like, it's not a movie that is ever going to win an Academy Award. It's not a movie that was ever going to win any acting awards. But it's like every bit as important as 99% of the Best Picture winners in cinema history. Right? Like, right? I mean, it really is.
It's memorable. Yeah, it is memorable.
It's solely due to the John Hughes directing and writing. Like, he really did it, you know? So, okay, I hope you've enjoyed being on that journey with us.
Yeah, I enjoyed the shit out of that. I want more of this type of stuff. I think this is great. I like your dissection of the bag of tricks and what their effect is. I think that's like when you're at your best, man.
Thank you, sir. So that's very sweet of you to say. Those of you who like this show, please leave us a rating and a comment on iTunes, or share it with your friends, because it helps us to find all the people who need, like Abe and I, to celebrate Ferris Bueller's genius. And people do. It really helps us to get the podcast out there. And we would love to be able to bring in more and more episodes for you guys. And that is the best way that you can help us do that. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Chicka chicka. You know I wanted to do that, right?
You have to do it. Yeah, you have to do it.
All right. That's where we're going to cut.
Perfect.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.